The morning light filtered softly through the curtains, casting a gentle glow over the small apartment we shared. I watched him from across the room, the way his fingers moved almost absent-mindedly as he traced the rim of his coffee cup. Aiden was always like this in the mornings, quiet, focused, wrapped up in the comfort of routine. It was in these small moments, unspoken and effortless, that I felt the strongest connection between us. Not flashy declarations or grand gestures, but the way our lives intertwined seamlessly, like two pieces of a puzzle finally fitting. We had been together for nearly 2 years now. What started as a deep friendship gradually blossomed into something neither of us planned, but both desperately needed. Aiden was the kind of person who could read my silence like a book, who knew when to pull me close and when to give me space. I like to think I did the same for him. That morning, though, there was an unusual tension hanging in the air, subtle but unmistakable. He was getting ready, adjusting the collar of his shirt with more care than usual, glancing at the clock, nervously. "I've got that thing tonight," he said casually, trying to sound nonchalant. "You know, a date with Jake." I raised an eyebrow, teasing, "Good luck on your date." The words slipped out before I could stop them, light and playful, as always. But instead of his usual smile, his eyes widened just for a fraction of a second, a flicker of panic that vanished almost immediately. I caught it, the way his hand trembled as he set down the coffee mug, the way his breath hitched ever so slightly. Something about that moment unsettled me, but I pushed the feeling aside. Maybe I was reading too much into it. "Thanks," he muttered, not meeting my gaze, turning back to the mirror to fix his hair. The laugh that followed sounded forced, hollow. We had been so comfortable with each other for so long that this tiny crack in the surface was enough to make me pause. I wanted to believe it was nothing, a simple nervousness before a casual night out. But the fear I saw in his eyes said otherwise. It spoke of secrets, of stories untold, of a distance I hadn't noticed creeping in between us. I wanted to ask, to hold on to whatever it was before it slipped away, but the words stuck in my throat. Instead, I watched as he slipped on his jacket and headed toward the door without looking back. That night, the apartment felt colder, emptier. The silence was deafening, and I lay awake wondering what the fear on his face really meant. What it was hiding, and if I was ready to find out. The days that followed were marked by an uneasy quietness, the kind that settles when something important is left unsaid. Aiden's usual openness began to fade, replaced by distracted glances and half-smiles that didn't reach his eyes. His phone became a barrier between us, always face down, always locked. I tried not to let it bother me, telling myself it was just a rough patch, that everyone needed space sometimes. But deep down, a knot of doubt was tightening in my chest. I found myself replaying the moment he left for that date. The way his smile faltered, the slight tremor in his hands. I kept asking myself what I missed, what I overlooked. Because no matter how much I told myself to trust, the signs were there. Quiet, but persistent. Missed calls, vague excuses, nights when he said he was out with friends, but came home late, smelling faintly of a cologne that wasn't mine. One evening, after he said he was meeting a group at a bar, I followed my instincts. I knew I was crossing a line, invading his privacy, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. From a distance, I saw him laughing with someone I didn't recognize, their faces close, their body language more intimate than friends. My heart hammered painfully against my ribs as I watched the scene unfold, a cruel twist of reality I wasn't prepared for. I didn't confront him that night. I wanted to, but the words stuck in my throat, tangled with fear and confusion. Instead, I waited, hoping to find a better time, a way to salvage what we had. But every day since, the distance between us grew more apparent. Our conversations became shorter, more guarded, I felt like a stranger living alongside someone I used to know. I remembered the nights when he would stay up just to hear my voice, when he would surprise me with small notes and late-night texts that made me feel seen. Now, those moments felt like a distant memory, a shadow of a love that was slipping through my fingers. Despite everything, I still wanted to believe in us. I clung to the hope that this was just a rough patch, that somehow he would come back to me. But the more I tried to reach him, the more he pulled away, as if protecting himself from a truth he wasn't ready to face. The silence became unbearable, filled with the weight of things left unsaid. I knew the moment was coming when I could no longer pretend that everything was okay. When I would have to confront the fear that had been flashing across his face the night he left for that date. The fear that whispered secrets I wasn't yet ready to hear. And in the quiet of that growing distance, I braced myself for the moment when the truth would finally break through the fragile silence between us. The day the truth finally revealed itself came quietly, almost by accident. I hadn't planned to look through his phone. I never wanted to cross that line. But a message notification lit up the screen as he left it unattended for just a moment. The words stared back at me. I can't stop thinking about last night. My heart twisted painfully, a sickening knot tightening with each syllable. The name attached was unfamiliar, and the weight of betrayal settled heavily on my chest. I sat frozen, the room suddenly too small, too suffocating. Everything I thought I knew unraveled in an instant. The small lies, the secretive glances, the distance between us. It all made sense now. Aiden wasn't just drifting away emotionally. He was slipping out of my life entirely, and I hadn't even seen it coming. When he returned, I confronted him quietly, my voice barely above a whisper. The pain in my chest made it hard to breathe, but I needed to hear the truth from his own lips. His eyes, usually so warm and familiar, avoided mine as he fumbled for words. The confession spilled out, raw and trembling. He had been seeing someone else. It hadn't started as anything serious, he claimed, just confusion, a mistake. But the damage was done. Listening to him, I realized that the betrayal wasn't just in the act itself, but in the countless moments of pretending. The trust shattered piece by piece. His tears and apologies couldn't erase the growing void between us. I saw a man torn between guilt and desire, but I was the one left shattered on the floor of our shared dreams. For a long moment, silence stretched between us, heavy and suffocating. I wanted to scream, to beg him to stay, to fix what was broken, but all I could do was turn away. The man I loved had become a stranger, and the fear that had flashed in his eyes that night was now a painful memory etched into my soul. Walking out felt like losing a part of myself, but it was also the first step toward reclaiming who I was. The betrayal had stripped away the illusions, but it also opened a door to something I hadn't dared to imagine: freedom. Not the freedom from him, but the freedom to be true to myself, to seek love without fear or secrets. As I closed the door behind me, I didn't look back. The past was heavy, but it no longer held me hostage. Somewhere deep inside, I knew this heartbreak was the beginning of a new chapter, painful, yet necessary. And though the silence between us was deafening, it spoke a truth louder than any words ever could. Weeks passed in a blur of quiet mornings and restless nights. The apartment we once shared felt like a distant memory, a chapter I was slowly closing. Despite the pain that lingered like a shadow, I began to feel something new stirring inside me. Something fragile but real. The promise of healing. The betrayal had carved a wound, yes, but it also forced me to confront the parts of myself I had long ignored. I learned to find comfort in solitude, rediscovering who I was, beyond the love I thought was unbreakable. The absence of Aiden's presence was a silence that no longer screamed but whispered, urging me forward. I focused on small things, the way sunlight spilled across the floor, the quiet rhythm of my own breath, the slow rebuilding of trust in myself. Then one afternoon, my phone buzzed with a message from him. Simple, unadorned. I miss you. I stared at the screen, feeling the old ache surface, sharp and familiar. But this time I didn't hesitate. Without a second thought, I deleted the message. There was no anger in the act, no desire for confrontation or revenge, just a quiet, resolute choice to let go. The decision wasn't easy, but it was necessary. I realized that love isn't about holding on when the trust is broken. It's about knowing when to walk away with dignity and grace. Aiden's fear that night, the panic I once mistook for something else, had spoken truths that were impossible to ignore. It was a fear rooted not only in his own confusion, but in the pain he was causing both of us. As I stood by the window, watching the world move forward outside, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. The story we shared wasn't ending in bitterness or regret, but in understanding. I had loved deeply, been broken, and now I was ready to be whole again. When I said, "Good luck on your date," the fear that flashed across his face said everything. I just didn't want to believe it then. Now I understand that sometimes love means letting go. Not because it's easy, but because it's the only way to find peace. And as the sun set, casting golden light over the city, I allowed myself to hope. Hope for new beginnings, for honesty, for a love that wouldn't need to hide in the shadows. The past was behind me, and the future was mine to write.